In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, April 25th. President Yoon Yeol is in Washington, D.C., having arrived there on Monday for a state visit that began with his welcoming of Netflix's investment of $2.5 billion in Korean entertainment content. And the White House says the Yoon-Biden summit will announce a tangible security assurance under the extended deterrence to counter Pyongyang's nuclear weapons ambitions. Meanwhile, all 28 South Koreans in war-torn Sudan have been safely evacuated in a mission by the country's special forces that reportedly took 10 days to plan and execute. We begin in Washington, D.C., where President Yoon Yeol has welcomed a hefty 4-year investment plan by Netflix in Korea's content industry. My colleague Oh Soo-young, who is part of the Presidential Press Corps, files this report.
As the self-professed #1 salesman of South Korea, President Yoon Yeol hit the ground running in Washington, D.C. on Monday afternoon, securing an investment of some $2.5 billion by global content platform Netflix in a meeting with the firm's CEO Ted Sarandos.
이번 투자는 대한민국 콘텐츠 산업과 창작자 그리고 넷플릭스 모두에게 큰 기회가 될 것입니다. 넷플릭스의 파격적인 투자 결정을 진심으로 환영합니다.
The investment will be used for creating Korean content over a stretch of 4 years.
I have no doubt that our investment will strengthen our long-term partnership with Korea and Korea's creative ecosystem. We are deepening our partnership with the Korea creative industry, which have produced such amazing hits as Squid Game, The Glory, Physical 100. With the partnership, we will continue to grow with the local industry while sharing the joy of entertainment with Korean storytellers and their fans around the world.
This comes as part of Yoon's mission to broaden and deepen bilateral ties in areas beyond traditional security. Stepping off Air Force One, President Yoon Yeol began a state visit to the United States on Monday, showing how the two countries' relations have evolved over the past 70 years, from the Mutual Defense Treaty in 1953 to a much broader economic, cultural and technological cooperation. The theme of his stateside visit is the alliance in action towards the future. During a summit with President Joe Biden on Wednesday, the two leaders will not only address security issues to deter against North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats, they are also expected to discuss ways to address a host of shared challenges and opportunities, with the goal of improving economic security through value-based cooperation. On that note, Yoon will attend events to foster partnerships in key strategic areas, including an investment forum and business roundtable focusing on advanced technologies, and a video content forum hosted by the Motion Picture Association. Going beyond the usual diplomatic outreach, the president will aim to encourage closer people-to-people exchanges across various sectors of society, speaking with not only state dignitaries, local politicians and business leaders, but also academics, scientists and students. US senators on Monday welcomed the South Korean president's arrival with a resolution proposal, endorsing efforts to turn the state visit into a chance to further strengthen the alliance. The bipartisan resolution is expected to be up for a vote on Tuesday. During his time in the land of the free, Yoon will emphasize the two societies' shared values of freedom, liberal democracy and human rights as the basis of their ever-tightening alliance. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Also on Monday, President Yoon Yeol met with the broader Korean community in Washington, D.C. Making note of the 120th anniversary of Korean immigration to Hawaii this year, President Yoon highlighted the role of the Korean-American community in bolstering the Seoul-Washington alliance. He further underscored Korean-American legislator Andy Kim's re-election for a third term in office during last year's midterm elections as proof of the perseverance of Koreans in various fields ranging from politics to the economy to culture. The president also highlighted the symbolic significance of the American capital city, as it was the place where activist and intellectual Seo Jae-pil studied medicine in the late 19th century, and also the place where former President Lee Seung-man formed a provisional government committee. And in Washington, D.C., cordial gestures of gracious hospitality are visible in the American capital city amid the state visit by the South Korean presidential delegation. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon took a walk around.
On Monday, South Korean flags were flying in parts of D.C. alongside the U.S. and District of Columbia flags. President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit, the first one in 12 years for a South Korean president, has begun.
This is the second state visit hosted by President Biden, the first foreign leader from the Asia-Pacific. The South Korea-U.S. alliance is the most successful alliance in the world history. The two overcame much through economic development and democratization.
As previous South Korean leaders have in the past, President Yoon will be staying at the presidential guest house, also known as Blair House. You can see it is now under heavy security with a large South Korean flag on display, a reference to the occupants for the next 4 days. And it's not just the scenes in the vicinity of Pennsylvania Avenue that are special. To celebrate the milestone 70th anniversary of the two countries' alliance, South Korean government-run buildings have put up special pictures. At Embassy Row, Washington, D.C.'s Korean Culture Center is displaying an image of a South Korean soldier from 2023 and a U.S. soldier from 1953 holding flags side by side. Underneath, it reads freedom and solidarity, the core value that the two countries have formed their alliance on. Deep in the heart of D.C., the old Korean legation on Logan Circle is also showing a smaller version. According to an official at this horse top office, these setups have been planned to remind the two countries of the past as well as to plan out a future together with the same spirit. The White House has also been busy preparing for the state dinner that follows the summit on Wednesday. For the main chef who will oversee the food served, the White House has chosen Edward Lee, a Korean-American chef. According to his recent interviews with local media, he is expected to merge Korean and American dishes to celebrate the alliance. As for the entertainment, there will be performances by Broadway stars including Norm Lewis. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Wednesday's Yoon-Biden summit in Washington, D.C. local time will reportedly share a deterrent statement detailing U.S. commitment to security on the Korean Peninsula amid Pyongyang's nuclear brinkmanship. Our Kim Jong-sil reports.
On Wednesday, President Biden and President Yoon will announce major deliverables on extended deterrence, on cyber cooperation, on climate mitigation, on foreign assistance, on investment, and on strengthening our people-to-people ties.
That was U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan speaking to reporters in Washington, D.C. on Monday. And when asked about the details of the deterrent statement, the White House official refrained from giving too many details.
What I will say is that we believe that that statement will send a very clear and demonstrable signal of the United States' credibility when it comes to its extended deterrence commitments to the Republic of Korea and to the people of Korea.
Sullivan's comment has prompted questions by watchers on what this future commitment to extended deterrence could mean. How different would it be, if at all? During the second meeting of the two leaders back in November, President Yoon said there's a need to effectively and drastically strengthen extended deterrence between South Korea and the U.S. in line with North Korea's advanced nuclear capabilities. Yoon's remarks may have given us a hint of what Wednesday's statement might be. Although the full extent of the deals won't be known until the announcement is made, multiple South Korean media agencies quoted a diplomatic source on Tuesday who said the two countries are in the final stages of drafting a document that would allow retaliation with U.S. nuclear weapons if North Korea launches such an attack on South Korea. Some reports are calling it a Korean-style nuclear sharing pact, with South Korea able to negotiate with the U.S. on the operation of American nuclear weapons if deemed necessary. The deal would be different from NATO's nuclear sharing agreement, as U.S. nuclear weapons would not be deployed in South Korea. All eyes are now on Wednesday's statement and what changes it may bring to deter Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And ahead of their scheduled summit on Wednesday local time, Presidents Yoon and Biden on Tuesday will visit the Korean War Veterans Memorial to mark the past selfless sacrifices of American service members for stability and security on the Korean Peninsula. Foreign Affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung has more.
Presidents Yoon and Biden, joined by the First Ladies, are set to visit the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington on Tuesday. The memorial commemorates more than 30,000 Americans who sacrificed their lives during the Korean War. President Yoon plans to commemorate the sacrifices of the war veterans who devoted themselves to South Korea's freedom and peace, and talk about the history and meaning of the nation's alliance through the war. He is also expected to underline the importance of advancing the alliance into the future. The presidential office also said the leaders will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Seoul-Washington alliance, together with the grandson of highly respected General Van Fleet and the daughter of Korean war hero General Baek Sun-yup, who have been invited as special guests. President Yoon is scheduled to hold a thank you lunch with 300 figures that represent the past, present, and future of the Seoul-Washington alliance. They include Korean War veterans, families of the bereaved, and service members of the United States Forces Korea. Yoon will also be awarding the Taeguk Order of Military Merit to 3 Americans who fought for South Korea in the Korean War. This is the highest decoration for military bravery and valor awarded by the South Korean government. The 3 awardees are retired Army Colonel Ralph Puckett, who led the 8th Army Ranger Company during the battle for Hill 205, retired Navy Captain Elmer Royce Williams, known for his solo dogfight with 7 Soviet pilots, and late First Lieutenant in the Marines, Baldomero Lopez, who saved his subordinates' lives by smothering a hand grenade with his own body during the Incheon landing. The award will be handed to a nephew on behalf of the late Lieutenant Lopez. This state visit appears to put great emphasis on the 2 countries' security alliance, as this is the first time for a South Korean president to award a military order outside the country. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Also on Tuesday, President Yeol will be visiting NASA's first space flight center amid hopes for greater collaboration on space ventures. Our Shin Ha-young has more.
Strengthening space cooperation is one of the centerpieces of the South Korea-U.S. summit. To expand into the space economy, South Korea's government has been long working with the U.S., the world's top nation in the space sector. And on Tuesday, President Yoon will be visiting NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, marking the 3rd time a South Korean leader has visited a NASA center. During the visit, President Yoon will meet with Korean-American scientists and receive a briefing on the importance of space for addressing climate change. Citing a White House official, Reuters also reported that South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT Lee Jong-ho and NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Mulroy will be signing a pact to boost bilateral cooperation in outer space. This will be a milestone for the 2 countries to strengthen studies in space telecommunication and lunar exploration, as well as Seoul's participation in NASA's Artemis program to return astronauts to the moon.
South Korea signed up to participate in a program to explore the moon and Mars about 2 years ago, but it was a belated contract, so the country has barely contributed to the program. So we expect the government to discuss ways to strengthen this partnership.
As President Yoon plans to establish a National Aeronautics Administration, or Korean version of NASA, this year, reportedly more details on bilateral cooperation are set to come out. The Yoon administration has been showing increased ambition for making inroads into the space sector at a time when North Korea has been developing its first military spy satellite. Part of the South Korean business delegation visiting the U.S. expects the 2 countries to further discuss establishing a joint venture between Korea's pharmaceutical company Poryong and America's privately funded space infrastructure developer Axiom Space. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
All 28 South Koreans previously in war-torn Sudan have been evacuated. Our defense correspondent Kim Hyun-sung has more on that mission.
Code name Promise. South Korea's evacuation mission that pledged to bring people out of Sudan and into safety has kept its word. All 28 South Korean nationals were safely rescued, as well as some Japanese citizens. This was a complicated undertaking that took 10 days to plan and execute. The mission started in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, on Sunday morning. The team of evacuees first traveled by bus to Port Sudan, the country's eastern port city. These two cities are 850 kilometers apart, which would usually be a 13-hour drive. But as the team navigated through Sudan's difficult terrain, taking a longer route to avoid the worst of the fighting, the drive reportedly took all day in searing heat. They were also in a race against time. Sudan's paramilitary group had only given a 72-hour window of peace on Friday to mark the start of the Muslim holiday, Eid al-Fitr. But even this ceasefire was not properly upheld. The bus reached Port Sudan on Monday afternoon. From there, the team boarded the South Korea dispatched military aircraft C-130J and flew to Jeddah Airport in Saudi Arabia. All hands were on deck for this mission. Special forces had been deployed. The ship Chungmugong Isun-shin from South Korea's Naval Task Group, the Cheonghae Unit, had also been dispatched to nearby waters in case the aircraft couldn't take off. South Korea's multi-purpose air tanker, the KC-330 Cygnus, also flew to Jeddah to take people home from there. All 28 nationals went aboard the flight. They're set to arrive at Seoul Air Base on Tuesday at about 4 in the afternoon. Back in Sudan, the warring factions have agreed to another 72-hour truce, starting midnight on Monday. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Monday that after 2 days of intense negotiations, the groups have agreed to put the fighting on hold to ensure the safe passage of Americans and foreign nationals out of Sudan. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Dozens of people, including women and children, have been killed in rampant violence among rival gangs in Haiti. And UN officials say the security situation there has hit an alarming level. Our Isingje reports.
According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, at least 70 people have been killed and 40 more wounded in clashes between rival gangs in Haiti between April 14th and 19th. The gang violence is centered in Cité Soleil, the largest slum in the capital Port-au-Prince. According to a statement released by OCHA, the humanitarian and security situation in many areas in Cité Soleil has now reached an alarming level. It stressed that women and children are especially exposed to the ongoing gang violence, with reports saying that 18 women and 2 children are among the dead. The violence has limited the movement in and out of Cité Soleil, while also cutting off access to essential goods and services. It's also led to the closure of many schools and health centers in the area. The region is also facing severe food insecurity and is among the worst affected by cholera in the country. At the same time, torrential rains in recent weeks have worsened health and living conditions for those living in the shantytown. Haitians who are sick and tired of the gang violence that has crippled the capital are now taking action. Police say a mob beat and burned 13 suspected gang members to death with gasoline-soaked tires in Port-au-Prince on Monday. Witnesses say the mob took the suspected gangsters away from police and beat them and stoned them before burning them to death. Port-au-Prince has seen criminal gangs take control of what's been estimated as more than 60% of the city since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. Isingje, Arirang News.
Back here at home, the local economy rebounded in the first quarter of this year on the back of greater private spending. Our Lee Soo-jin has more on the latest figures.
South Korea's economy grew in the first quarter of this year compared to the previous quarter, despite the downturn in the global economy. Data from the Bank of Korea released on Tuesday shows that the country's gross domestic product, adjusted for inflation, is estimated to have risen 0.3% on quarter during the January to March period of this year. This is a turnaround from the contraction recorded in the fourth quarter of last year. This means the country avoided going into recession, which is typically defined as 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction. The country's GDP had been growing since the third quarter of 2020 before contracting in the fourth quarter of last year due to plunging exports, a key driver of the Korean economy. The central bank attributed the growth in the first quarter to a recovery in private consumption. Private consumption rose by 0.5% thanks to an increase in spending on recreation activities, restaurants, and accommodation. Investment in construction also increased by 0.2%. Facility investment, on the other hand, shrank 4% as demand for semiconductor equipment and machinery dropped. Meanwhile, South Korea's gross national income, the total amount of money earned by people and businesses, also rose 0.8% as prices of major imported goods, such as natural gas, fell. The Bank of Korea hinted that it may adjust downward its 2023 economic growth projection, currently at 1.6%.
As of now, the annual growth projection is likely to be revised down slightly due to uncertainties surrounding the recovery in the IT sector and the delayed economic impact from China's reopening.
The nation has seen an on-year decline in outbound shipments since October last year due to the ongoing slump in the semiconductor industry and has logged a trade deficit since March last year. 이수진, Arirang News.
Chilean Energy Minister Diego Pardo Lorenzo believes green hydrogen is the way forward for joint ventures between South Korea and Chile. Our business correspondent Arirang covers his remarks.
South Korea has envisioned a clean hydrogen ecosystem that it wants to build with Chile. Celebrating the 20th anniversary of the South Korea-Chile Free Trade Agreement, the two countries' government and business officials on Monday sat together in Seoul to discuss more on clean energies and low-carbon hydrogen. Chile is a country with high competence in hydrogen production with rich sources in solar and wind energy. It's also the first country in Latin America to announce a national green hydrogen strategy, showing a strong willingness to transition to a hydrogen economy.
Hydrogen is a way basically of storing energy, and there are some industries in which hydrogen is going to be able to decarbonize those heavy industries. So both for industries and for mobilities, hydrogen is a complementary tool to the ones that we already have.
The minister also explained that hydrogen can provide the opportunity to build a new sustainable industry.
Sustainable industry that will come to replace an old fossil dying industry. And that is a way of providing these communities with hope that the new green economy is also something that gives them an opportunity to carry on with their lives in a sustainable manner.
South Korea, too, is working to expand its hydrogen industry, especially in sectors such as cars and fuel cells. The country announced in early 2019 how it plans to transition to a hydrogen economy and has legislated acts related to nurturing the sector and safety management. Last year, it also presented a national growth strategy to make Korea #1 in the global hydrogen industry.
So in 2020, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Energy and Trade and Economy of Korea. And this implementation agenda is much focused on these two things that we were just discussing, on certification and also finding channels of communication between private business here in Korea and private business in Chile, so they.
The minister highlighted that the international community should be creating a certification system that ensures the hydrogen or derivatives provided to countries are green, while building institutions that support long-term contracts and make credible commitments. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Nationwide spring rain is soaking the entire country. The capital will see sprinkles, which won't be enough to ease the dryness in the air. A dry advisory remains in place here. Meanwhile, Jeju Island could see up to 30 millimeters of rainfall into tonight. We also need to dress a bit more warmly as that rain brings down the highs to the much cooler side. Afternoon highs are going down 3 to 7 degrees lower than yesterday, hovering in the low teens this afternoon. So it should not feel much different from the wake-up temperatures today. Much cooler than season norms all day under murky skies with rain, but we are welcoming that good air quality nationwide. There will be light passing rain tomorrow morning in central areas, then sunshine and warmth return toward the end of the work week. Now the weather outlook in Washington, D.C., where the South Korean president begins his official state visit on Tuesday. Mostly sunny skies becoming cloudier in the afternoon with balmy afternoon temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour, but do stay with us for our panel session coming up next. Thank you for now.